The story happened when I was 17, but it took place when I was just 12. My father had just passed away, and it was just me, my mother, and Maple, the loyal golden retriever. One afternoon in early winter, Maple started doing something strange. It scratched at the old mirror hanging at the end of the hallway. At first, I thought it was just being playful until a shadow flashed behind the glass. I'll never forget that day in early November. The weather in Ohio was so cold that the window in my room was covered with fog until noon. At that time, I was living with my mother and Maple, the 3-year-old golden retriever, the last gift my dad had left before he passed away suddenly from an accident. When my father died, it felt like the world shattered inside me, and my mother was no longer the woman who used to laugh. We lived quietly, trying to piece together the fragments of a family missing an important part, and Maple, though a dog, had never left my side, as if it understood, deeply and silently. That afternoon, after school, I kicked off my muddy shoes at the door and lazily shuffled into the kitchen when I heard a thud, a strange sound coming from the second floor. There was no one else at home but me and Maple. My mom was still working at the bakery a few blocks away. I froze. No TV, no music, just the silence stretching on. And again, thud, thud. I rushed up the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. Maple, are you okay? And then I saw it. Maple sitting perfectly still in the hallway on the second floor, right in front of the old mirror that had been there since my grandfather's time. The mirror was long, with a dark wooden frame intricately carved, antique and somewhat eerie if you looked at it for too long. Maple had one paw raised, pressed gently against the glass, not scratching, not playing, just resting it lightly, as if trying to touch something inside. I walked closer, frowning. "What do you see?" Maple didn't bark, didn't turn to me. It just tapped the mirror softly twice more. Thud, thud. Its warm brown eyes glistened with something. Not fear, not curiosity. More like a reminder. A waiting. I was about to laugh, to tell it, "Come on, it's just you in the mirror." But then I looked into the mirror too. And in that exact moment, I saw something move. It wasn't me. It wasn't Maple. A shadow passed through the mirror, as if someone walked behind me, and then disappeared. I stumbled back a step, my chest tightening. The chill down my spine didn't come from the autumn air outside, but from somewhere deep inside my chest, as if the mirror wasn't just reflecting, but also hiding something. Maple glanced at me, then back at the mirror. It didn't bark. It just sat there quietly, as if waiting for me to understand. My mother wasn't one to believe in superstitions or omens, but after nearly a week of Maple constantly rushing upstairs and sitting still like a statue in front of that mirror, she began to feel strange. "Maybe it smells something odd behind the mirror," she mumbled Saturday morning as she took out the toolbox. I was gently holding Maple's collar to keep it from rushing in to cause trouble. But inside I was excited. We had never taken the mirror off the wall. It was too heavy, too old, and a fixture in the house since my grandfather's time. When my mother finally unscrewed the last screw and carefully lifted the mirror off, what we saw behind it made both of us stand still for a few seconds. Another piece of wood, a different color, was nailed up as if someone had intentionally hidden it. "This is a partition?" my mother asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, my eyes never leaving Maple. It began scratching lightly at the wooden panel, just like before. Determined, unafraid. "There's something behind it," I whispered. My mother hesitated. "Your father grew up here, but I've never heard of anything behind the mirror." She grabbed a crowbar, and with a creaking noise that sent shivers down our spines, the panel popped off, revealing a small hollow in the wall, only about 30 centimeters deep, just enough to hide something discreetly. Maple stuck its head in first, sniffing around, then suddenly barked sharply. Inside, beneath a layer of dust, was a small wooden box with rusty hinges and a brass clasp tarnished with age. I carefully lifted the box, my heart pounding in my chest. "This can't be," my mother whispered as she opened the box. Inside, there was a faded baby's woolen hat, soft as silk, a stack of handwritten letters, the paper yellowed, with ink that had faded to a light brown, a series of black and white photos, one of which showed a young man holding a little girl, and finally, a military medal. Cold metal, rusted but still holding a dignified look. I couldn't find the words to speak. I didn't know why, but knew this wasn't just an ordinary box. "What secret is this?" my mother whispered, almost to herself. "Is it from your father or someone your father knew?" Maple sat between us, its tail wagging gently as if smiling. We sat at the dining table, the kitchen still, except for the clock ticking on the wall. My mother carefully opened each letter in the old box that Maple had helped us find behind the mirror. The handwriting was shaky, some parts blurred, but still legible. They were addressed to someone named Raymond Ellis, my grandfather, and the writer? A strange name that my mother had never mentioned in the 12 years I'd been alive. June. The first letter was a tender message mixed with sorrow. June wrote about the short but unforgettable time spent with my grandfather Raymond, about the days when light could still slip through the cracks of war. Then, the following lines made my mother hold her breath, and I couldn't understand why my heart felt so tight. The little girl was born on an April morning. I named her Lillian, a little flower in the wasteland. Raymond, if you're reading this, I'm no longer here. I don't blame you. But Lillian deserves to know that she was once loved. My mother sat silently for a long time, her lips pressed tightly together. When she finally looked up, her eyes were red. "You've never heard this name, have you, Noah?" I shook my head. Lillian, no one in the family had ever mentioned a girl by that name. Maple lay under my feet, its head resting on the pillow, its warm eyes as if waiting for something. The last letter was shorter than the others, just one line written hurriedly in darker ink, as though penned in intense emotion. "The truth doesn't disappear. It's always been there." That day, for the first time, I understood that my family had things I didn't know. There were parts folded away, hidden in the walls, locked in a wooden box, and returned to the light by a dog who understood more than anyone else. Since the day we removed the mirror and found the old box, Maple had changed. It no longer scratched at the mirror every afternoon when I came home from school. No longer did it have that pleading look, as if wanting to say something. Instead, it became lighter, more peaceful, as if it had completed some secret mission that no one but it could understand. I thought that was the end of it, but I was wrong. On a Wednesday afternoon after school, Maple stood right by the door, not barking, just looking at me and wagging its tail once. I opened the door, and it turned its head, then started walking, not running, not pulling, just slowly heading toward the far end of the backyard, where a forest could be glimpsed through the old wooden fence. I followed it. We crossed the patch of wild grass, trudged through the thick, dry leaves, and ventured I was sure I had never known. The trees grew denser the further we went. The air became calm and eerily silent. Then Maple stopped. In the middle of a small clearing surrounded by ivy and ferns, there was a flat stone covered in green moss, almost sunken into the earth. I knelt, gently peeling away the moss from the stone's surface, my heart racing, and then the faintly carved words appeared. Lillian. That was it. No birth date, no death date, no farewell. Just a name, buried, quite literally, in the silence that had stretched over generations. I sank to the ground, my mind filled with questions no one alive could answer. Maple sat beside me, its head resting on my lap, silent like a sentinel. You knew, I whispered. Maple didn't look at me. It only looked at the stone, its gaze quiet, gentle, and heart-wrenching. I didn't know how Maple had found this place, but I knew one thing for certain. Without it, no one in my family would have ever known that Lillian, the one whose name had never been spoken, had once existed. That evening, I told my mother. She didn't say anything. She just hugged me tightly. Then she took a bouquet of wildflowers, wrapped it in a cloth, and the next day, the three of us, me, my mother, and Maple, returned to that place. We placed the flowers on the stone. My mother cried. Maple just silently sat, guarding, as if it were the last soldier still fulfilling its duty. From that day on, Maple never led me there again. But every time we went back to visit Lillian's grave, it always walked ahead slowly, eyes still fixed forward, as if checking to see if anyone else was watching. After we found the stone with Lillian's name, my mother called Uncle Tom, my grandfather's oldest brother, who had moved to another state many years ago. At first, he didn't say anything when he heard the story. He just sat there, silent for a long time. Then he sighed as if carrying the weight of a hidden childhood. You just mentioned June, didn't you? June. That name. No one in my family had ever mentioned it. Not once during any meal, any memorial gathering, or any story my grandfather used to tell when he was alive. Uncle Tom confirmed. Long ago, June had lived with my grandfather in Ohio for a short while, then suddenly disappeared. No one knew what had happened. Only my grandfather knew, and he chose to remain silent about it for the rest of his life. I asked, "And Lillian?" Uncle Tom froze. Then he exclaimed, "Oh my God, so it's true." My mother recounted the story of Maple, my intelligent golden retriever, leading us to the grave. She talked about the letters behind the mirror and the tiny infant cap in the box. Uncle Tom couldn't hide his emotions. He just sighed deeply. A few weeks later, a local newspaper reporter heard the story from a friend of my mother's. They asked for permission to publish an article titled, "The Dog Who Unearthed 3 Generations of Secrets, and the Girl Who Was Never Named." We agreed, not for fame, but so that someone, if they remembered, might add another piece to the puzzle. And they came. Not with words, but with envelopes, sent every day. An elderly woman from Dayton sent a black and white photo of a curly-haired girl holding a child in front of a wooden house. The caption read, "Spring, 1947, June and L." An old man named Harold wrote by hand. I used to be a neighbor of the Ellis family. My mother said June had a child, but no one was allowed to ask. A middle-aged woman named Georgia sent a pair of silver daisy-shaped earrings, saying they were something her mother had kept from a woman named June, the saddest woman I ever met. Each item, each letter, each photo like puzzle pieces falling from an ancient memory, slowly being pieced together, thanks to a dog who couldn't speak but could listen to history. It was December, wind howling through the old window, the gray sky as if carrying an unspoken message. Maple began to behave oddly. It no longer ran around the yard, nor did it lie by the window as usual. Instead, every day, it lay quietly by the old armchair in the living room, where my father used to sit, reading books, drinking tea, or simply sitting in silence, watching the rain fall behind the glass. At first, I thought Maple was nostalgic. He had been closest to my father, but after several days, I noticed him doing something strange. Maple would press his nose against the armchair, curl into the gap between the cushion and the armrest, and then raise his head to look at me as if saying, "It's here. Something's here." I called my mom. We gently removed the old cushion. Beneath it, between the wood and the lining, was a section of the fabric that had been lightly slit, almost as if someone had deliberately hidden something without revealing it. I slid my hand in. The sensation of touching soft, smooth leather. A book. Old. The brown leather cover is worn. We opened it. The first page had familiar handwriting, thick strokes but neat. Raymond Ellis, Jr. My father's full name. This wasn't a diary where dates were regularly written down. Instead, it was fragmented writing, musings like late-night thoughts. When the house was quiet, and the only one listening was Maple. A passage made me choke up as I read, "Maple knows when I'm in pain. He doesn't need to ask. He lies beside me, silently guarding the things I can't face." The next page, "I dream of Father. I dream of him by the lake, holding a little girl. I call out, but he doesn't turn back." Page after page, line by line, was the loneliness my father never spoke of, the grief of losing his father, my grandfather, the haunting memory of someone named June, whom he probably only knew through vague conversations, and Lillian, someone he had never met, but who always appeared in his dreams like a memory passed down from flesh and blood. The last line, written in trembling handwriting, "If Maple leads you here, he believes you're ready." I stood still. My mom didn't say anything. She hugged the notebook, like she was holding a part of her husband's heart, the silent man who had never stopped loving and aching. That night, Maple lay under the armchair, silent, like a soldier standing guard. No command needed, no affection required. He just existed exactly where he needed to be. One cold February afternoon, when the sunlight was just a faint orange strip on the window, my mom called me into the living room. She was holding an old yellow envelope with no sender's address, just a short line written on it. For the family of Raymond. Inside was a cassette tape, a thing I had only seen in old films. Accompanying it was a handwritten note in blue ink. "My name is Clara. I was the nurse who cared for June in her final days. She asked me to record her story. She said, 'If the truth is found one day, this tape will know when to find its way to where it belongs.'" We sat in silence. My mom took the old cassette player from the office, a relic she had kept since her youth. I pressed play. The initial crackling sound. Then a voice began to speak. A woman's voice, soft but steady, like a whisper from a faraway place. "My name is June. I was never written in any family tree, never featured in any photograph of the Raymonds, but I loved him. Raymond Ellis Sr. and we had a daughter." June's voice faltered for a moment. I looked over at my mom. She was already in tears. Her name was Lillian. She was born on a sunny spring day, but not for long. I only held her once. Raymond wanted to keep it a secret, not because of shame, but because he feared the truth would tear the family apart. I don't blame him. Back then, war, prejudice, the gaps were more capable of killing the truth than a bullet. June's voice slowed down as though reminiscing. I wrote letters. I left mementos. I believed that one day, a child, or someone with a heart patient enough, would find this memory. If you're hearing this, then you are the one. My mom gripped my hand tightly. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, like the beat of a drum in an invisible ceremony. June continued, "Don't tell this story as a tragedy. Tell it like a song, like a field of wild daisies. Let my daughter Lillian be remembered, not because she was lost, but because she once existed." When the tape stopped, the living room sank into silence. No one said anything. We just sat there, next to Maple, the dog whose eyes seemed to have known it all along. We thought everything had closed with June's tape. The truth had been found, and the memory had been returned to its rightful place. I once thought Maple's journey had ended. She had helped us find Lillian, understood June, and uncovered the layers of forgotten memories in my family. That evening, I sat next to Maple, gently stroking her golden coat, now touched with silver. "You knew from the start, didn't you?" Like a soft sigh, Maple lowered her head and closed her eyes. That spring came early. Wild daisies bloomed white in a corner of the woods as if they knew. Today was a special day. My family, gathered by Lillian's grave. A grave that had been forgotten, but now had become a place where everyone stopped to reflect quietly. On the small stone was the simple inscription, "Lillian, you lived in the hearts of others, even when they didn't know." The memorial wasn't filled with speeches, no extravagance, just flowers, the sound of the wind, and murmured stories. The story ended, not with a period, but with an answer that had been found. Everything began with a mirror and ended with a journey to recover a forgotten memory. No one in my family ever guessed that a dog, Maple, would lead the way for us all. She silently showed us the most important thing: truth, love, and family. Maple, the keeper of memories. The story closes with gratitude and begins a new chapter, where memories will live forever.